My name is Mary Out. I'm the Regional President for PNC here in the Central Ohio market. On behalf of PNC and our co-sponsors, Honda and Wright State University, we would like to commemorate and celebrate the 2019 Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame inductees for their commitment to advancing positive change. PNC has sponsored and supported the Commission and this event since its inception in 2009. We truly believe in supporting entities and events like this because they directly reflect our company's core values, things like respect, integrity, diversity, and inclusion. As we live these values every day inside our own company, it's important for the community, our customers, and our employees to realize that we support those that are focused on these same values. Thank you to the Commission for continuing to provide our community with an opportunity to acknowledge these outstanding Ohioans in what promises to be an uplifting celebration. And now I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our Mistress of Ceremonies. Although she needs no introduction, Angela Case has spent her entire life and career here in Central Ohio. As many of you know, she's a proud graduate of the Columbus City School System and Capital University. She's a true steward that's worked tirelessly to advocate for all Central Ohioans in our community. She began her career as a TV journalist with WCMH, and in 1993 moved to WBNS, and her current role is Director of Community Affairs for 10 TV. She's received numerous community and broadcast awards over the years. It would take too long to name them all. But one I wanted to highlight is that she was named a YWCA Woman of Achievement. Angela currently serves on the board of directors for CAPA, the Lincoln Theater, and the Greater Columbus Arts Council. Now join me in giving a warm welcome to Angela Case. I know she'll keep it fun for us today.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much, Mary. I feel really good. I always love it when I have a live audience because y'all captains now, you can't go nowhere until I say you can. And I love the fact that Chairman Barreras just called me a rock star. So I think that she did that to feed my ego since I'm not getting paid for this gig. So, I want to welcome all of you to the 2019 Ohio Civil Rights Commission Hall of Fame. I have to give a shout out right now to my photographer back there, Rich Yetlica from 10 TV. Rich, you know which is one of your time. And I bring you greetings this morning from the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, Chair Lori Barreras and Commissioners Madhu Singh, William Patton III, Juan Cespedes, and Dr. Carolyn Peters. You're all here on the front row, I believe. Thank you for being here. And greetings also from the Commission staff, Director T. Michael Payton. Hi, Michael. I've been crushing on Michael for a couple of years now. And our event sponsors, Wright State University, Honda, and PNC. And I have emceed this event a few times now. I am always inspired by the stories of our honorees. Now I gotta take that back. I'm actually put to shame by the stories of our honorees. I feel like I ain't done nothing and I need to get busy real quick. But I'm also inspired, and I think all of you will be too. So please stand as we welcome our 2019 honorees. Representing Thomas Jefferson Ferguson is Paula Willis. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Ohio State Highway Patrol Honor Guard. Following the presentation of colors, Demisha Marshall and James Blackman from Opera Columbus will bring us the national anthem. And then students, my babies, from the Arts and College Preparatory Academy, Catherine Moore, Eli Bedels, and Alicia Grove will join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right now, the Honor Guard.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sing us that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Right. Face. March.
Okay, y'all can sit down now. Many thanks to the Ohio State Highway Patrol Honor Guard, Demisha Marshall and James Blackman from Opera Columbus, and Catherine, Eli, and Alexia from the Arts and College Preparatory Academy. Can we get one more round of applause for our ladies? This Hall of Fame event is lucky to every year have great companies and organizations as supporters and sponsors. Honda has been with us from the very beginning. And here from Honda North America is O'Neill Saunders. O'Neill?
Thank you. Every time I do this and come to this, I feel inadequate. Just remind me, whatever I think I've done, I need to do more. Good morning and welcome. I'm O'Neill Saunders, Deputy General Counsel of Honda North America. I'm a native of Columbus, proud triple Buckeye, and a former state of Ohio employee, having worked as counsel in both the Ohio Auditor of State's Office and the Attorney General's Office. So it truly gives me great pleasure today to join you at this ceremony. Honda is proud to be a founding sponsor of the Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame and the induction ceremony. The Hall of Fame informal, lasting way to honor the extraordinary individuals who've made strides in creating a just and equitable society. These individuals have carried a torch to light the path for future generations. And so it's important that their efforts be recognized and indeed memorialized as part of our state's history. At Honda, we encourage our associates to carry their own torch in order to be innovative and luminary. This way of thinking originated with our founder, Mr. Soichiro Honda, when he took the bold steps to form a company in 1948. This year, Honda is celebrating another step for our company, the start of U.S. manufacturing right here in Ohio 40 years ago. We are proud to be part of the state and proud to help honor the state's rich community of champions who took the bold steps in the name of civil rights and civil justice. Today, it is my honor to introduce and help welcome a civil rights advocate who continues to carry the torch for future generations. He's seen firsthand the effects that policymaking has on one's community and has used his skills and his strengths to foster inclusion and to make a difference in society. Born and raised in the south side of Columbus, City Council President Shannon G. Hardin has dedicated his career to advocating for those discriminated against and disenfranchised. Council President Hardin led efforts to analyze how the city can better help connect minority communities to education, to health care, and to work. He helped create Columbus's My Brother's Keeper initiative that aims to create better opportunities for young men of color. He works to maintain a city government that does not discriminate and that drives policy making and encourages equity and inclusion. Council President Hardin demonstrates his passion and his dedication to making this community a better place for everyone through his work and support of others in Columbus. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming City Council President Shannon G. Hardin.
I want to recognize my mentor, someone who, whenever I am in her presence, she makes me blush, Miss Angela Bass. I think that's probably all of us, whenever we're in Miss Angela's presence. Certainly want to thank the sponsors of today's event, O'Neill Saunders, of course, and Honda, to President Mary Hawk and PNC, to Lindsay Miller and Wright State University. Also want to recognize the members of the Civil Rights Commission, as well as the commission staff under the leadership of Director Michael Payton. Thank you so much. Thank you for all those who have worked to make today's ceremony reality. I'd also like to recognize someone who I consider like a second mom to me, Ms. Janine Donaldson, who is here and was the first woman to chair this commission. Ms. Donaldson, please stand and be recognized. Like I said, I really am honored to be a part of today's ceremony. I'm honored partially because of the caliber of past inductees, like C.J. McClin Jr., who was a state representative and one of the founders of the Black Elected Democrats of Ohio, a group which served as a focal point for legislative issues facing African Americans. Or like the late Toni Morrison, who was born in Lorain County, whose famed writing portrayed the painful heritage of slavery in American society, how that legacy continues to the present day. And even Carl Stokes was the first Black mayor of Cleveland, and really the first Black mayor to lead a large city. And I'm also honored because of the mission of today's event. The Civil Rights Hall of Fame seeks to acknowledge outstanding Ohioans who are recognized as pioneers in human and civil rights, and who have advanced the goals of equality and inclusion. Today's honorees help lead the struggle for civil rights, for cultural awareness, and for a more just society. I have to admit, though, that I'm especially honored because of this year's class of inductees. I learned in between the time of being invited to be a part of today's ceremony and this morning that this is a very special class to me. The first inductee we'll honor today is Thomas Jefferson Ferguson. Thomas Jefferson Ferguson was one of the first in his family to read and write. In 1857, Ferguson enrolled in the Albany Manual Labor Academy, or AMLU, in order to pursue the equivalent of a college education. He stayed at AMLU until it was purchased by a private organization that did not allow people of color or women. After being denied education because of his race, he helped to create the Albany Enterprise Academy in 1863. The Albany Enterprise Academy is recognized as the first institution of higher education created by, owned by, and operated for African Americans. Furthermore, Ferguson spearheaded the formulation of the Ohio Colored Teachers Association. Most interesting to me, however, is that Thomas Jefferson Ferguson was the first black member of the Albany City Council in Athens County, Ohio. So I am proud to stand here today on behalf of my family as the great-great-great-great-nephew of Mr. Thomas Jefferson Ferguson. Would you allow me the presidential privilege to recognize my family who's also here? Family, would you please stand to be recognized? But you know, this ceremony is personal to me in another way. Not only do I operate as a black man in America, just like my great uncle did, but I'm also openly gay. This ceremony, I'm in fact the first openly gay president of Columbus City Council, and the first openly gay black member of our capital city's legislative body. I remember previously thinking about my sexuality as a burden, as a hindrance to my public service. I used to serve as the liaison to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so I had the opportunity to travel a lot with my mentor, former Mayor Coleman. And on one of the trips back to Columbus, Coleman was having this conversation with me, saying that it was time for me to step up. It was time for me to go into public service. Now I was 25 years old. And so I went into this cadence of a real argument with the mayor on this flight back home. He said, "Shannon, you need to run." And I said, "Well, Mayor, I'm way too liberal for this city. I'm only 25, 26 years old." And he said, "Shannon, I know that." And I said, "Well, Mayor, not only am I young, but I'm black." And he said, "Well, Shannon, I can see that." And I said, "Well, Mayor, not only am I young and I'm black, but I'm also gay." And he said, "Shannon, that's only a problem. It's an issue for you. In fact, that's the reason why you must serve, because in a growing and progressive city, folks need to see themselves represented in their leadership." And it was his push that allowed me to serve today. Not too long after I came out to the mayor, I became the mayor's liaison to the LGBTQ community. So I dealt with the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. This is a score that the HRC developed to determine how inclusive a city is for LGBTQ individuals. HRC does this in a very strategic way. They show you the score that they would give you, but they say you can fix it if you do X, Y, and Z. Now, this next part might embarrass my great uncle, Thomas Jefferson Ferguson, considering the man helped found an institution of higher education. But I went to the former Mayor Coleman after getting our initial score. It was around an 80-something out of 100. I went down to his office, all excited. I said, "Mayor, we got a B." Clearly that indicates my grades at Morehouse. But a B wasn't good enough. So we crafted new policies. We expanded our anti-discrimination protections. We banned conversion therapy. And we did much more. And because of those actions, we improved our score to 100 out of 100. It was because of policy change and legislative action that we were able to move the needle. That's how this country has moved the needle on civil rights historically. In preparing for this event, I began to think about my rights as a gay black man in 2019. For me, the two most important pieces of civil rights history that affect my life are the 14th and 15th Amendments, which respectively ensure that equal protection under the law and ensure African Americans the right to vote. And the second was the recent ruling on Obergefell versus Hodges, which provided same-sex couples the right to marry. The 14th Amendment says that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. No state shall make or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Article 15 of the Constitution states that the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So the only reason that C.J. McClin, my great-uncle Thomas Jefferson Ferguson, Senator Sykes, Senator Craig, and myself can serve in elected office because of Articles 14 and 15 of the U.S. Constitution. Now, it may seem odd to compare the 14th and 15th amendments to a recent Supreme Court case, especially because the case is an interpretation of the 14th Amendment to ensure states recognize same-sex marriages. But Obergefell versus Hodges stands tall in my mind, given that just this past Friday I got back from my honeymoon. Without that Supreme Court ruling just 4 years ago, I would not have been able to marry my husband, Ben. I'm highlighting these two distinct pillars of civil rights progress to draw out an essential point about the way we both individually and collectively conceptualize history, memory, and our role in it. My friend June Gutterman, a longtime CEO of Columbus Jewish Family Services, once said that in the Jewish community, we don't have history. We have memories. You see, history is separate, something that happened to someone else a long time ago. However, memories are ours. We're a part of it. For me, the 14th and 15th Amendments are chapters of our history, something that happened some time ago. And while I reap the benefits of that history each day, I think of that ratification as separate from me. Now, all the members of the LGBTQ community can remember exactly where we were in 2015 when the Supreme Court made that ruling. I was running for office for the first time and dropped everything and went to celebrate with the community. And while I have literal memories of Obergefell versus Hodges, it is a moment still that exists as somewhat separate from me. But the fight for marriage equality isn't encapsulated in the Obergefell case. That doesn't capture the fundamental and foundational activism from groups like ACT UP, fighting for the AIDS epidemic, or the state-by-state campaigns waged that changed hearts and minds, or the long-running legal strategy that got us to the Supreme Court in the first place. It was also the small yet heroic actions of millions of Americans coming out to their families, showing everyone that gay Americans are no different than anyone else. Those small acts, the changing of hearts and minds, the slow build to that day in Washington that I and many will remember. See, the tension between civil rights history and civil rights memory speaks to what is ours, what we see ourselves in. And I believe it is our respective and collective responsibility now to create new civil rights memories, to create history our descendants can look back upon years from now, and to tell our stories. Stories that fill our imaginations and that build our connections to the past and to the future. We have to remember that the historic acts of our ancestors and the inductees today were not any easier just because they happened a long time ago. They made hard choices. They did things that made folks uncomfortable. When my great uncle got kicked out of the school, he could have taken a job more customary for an African American at the time, but he made the decision to do the harder thing. When Jerry Mock told her friend she was going to fly out of Port Columbus and become the first woman to circle the earth, I'm sure her friends laughed and called her crazy. When Mary Hackney heard that children were protesting in all-white school for denying them an education, she could have just kept on going about her business. Yet she led a group of teachers and provided lessons to those children. And what did she receive for her activism? She was met with threats against her and her family. When Dr. Jack Hansen strengthened the Civil Rights Commission as director of the Ohio Department of Public Welfare, I'm sure some said he was pushing the boundaries of what were considered rights at that time. When Bert Silverman, 26-year chairman of the Toledo Board of Community Relations, brought together 22 African American leaders and 22 white leaders discuss racism in the 60s, some folks probably wish that they could just talk about the weather. And when Stanley Tolliver was appointed by a federal judge to help minorities monitor the desegregation of Cleveland City schools, he could have patted himself in the back and said, "Job well done," but instead, he doubled down, serving on Cleveland Board of Education and even leading the board as president during his 12 years of service. See, despite the obstacles, despite being the harder thing to do, they did it anyway. Folks, history is not made by the other person. It's made by folks just like you and me. We have the same blood running through our veins, and we face the same fears as the inductees face. Yet they pushed on anyway. That's why this past year, my colleagues and I on council took on marijuana decriminalization. We knew that almost 2/3 of those charged with marijuana possession in the city of Columbus were men that looked like me, and nearly half of those charged were under the age of 25. That's why we lowered the penalties of marijuana possession and funded the Legal Aid Society to ensure those that are previously impacted by the war on drugs to secure housing and employment. And that's why our city attorneys at Fine recently announced that we will no longer prosecute misdemeanor marijuana offenses in our city. That's also why I'm proud to work with Mayor Ginther to bridge the disparity that exists in city contracting. In 2016, only 8% of our contracts were awarded to minority or woman-owned firms. I'm proud to say that in just 2 years, we nearly doubled that number to 15.6%, but that's not nearly enough. And I'm committed to ensuring that all small businesses have a fair shot in our city. Our Jewish brothers and sisters have a religious custom that I highly admire as well. They practice the sacred observance of the Seder dinner. Seder is a ritual involving multiple generations retelling the story of the Israelites' liberation from slavery in ancient Egypt. The Seder is about telling the story. It's about reliving the experiences of the Exodus out of Egypt. The essential piece, though, of the Seder is that it is shared with the children, so it becomes a fabric of their lives. They retell the story so they can remember. That's why this commission is so important, why today's ceremony is so important, because it reminds all Ohioans of those who committed their lives to the betterment of mankind. And we need to stack hands with the commission and ensure that we too are telling that story. You see, I first learned of my great uncle by my great grandmother, who took all of her grandchildren down to that location of where the school that he built. She told the story. Dr. King once said that the arc of the world universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But it doesn't just bend because it's preordained. It doesn't bend because it's meant to be. It bends when folks in this room push hard against the forces of intolerance and bigotry. It bends when we recognize white supremacy in all of our systems. That moral arc bends when we act to create a more just and equitable world, when we work to leave a legacy and memories for our great nieces and nephews. It bends when we all tell our stories. Thank you and God bless.
Demisha Marshall and pianist James Blackman with us this morning. We've already heard her amazing performance of the national anthem. And now, with another musical selection, Demisha Marshall and James Blackman.
Just like the river I've been
gentlemen, boys and girls, we just got took to church. You don't know what that means? Ask your neighbor. Thank you so much, Demisha and Jay. Thank you. Thank you so much for setting the tone for what we're here about today. Thank you. about our 2019 honorees. Their complete histories are in your program, so you can read them at your leisure, memorize all the facts because there will be a quiz at the end of the program. But it's now time to hear from their representatives and to honor these incredible people who have done so much to make Ohio the great state that it is. We've already heard a lot about our first honoree, thanks to President Hardin there, Thomas Jefferson Ferguson. Growing up in Cincinnati in the 1800s, Thomas Jefferson Ferguson learned the value of literacy at an early age, and he spent much of his youth teaching others how to read and write. By his 20s, he was traveling through parts of Ohio and West Virginia, teaching African Americans how to read. You've already heard President Hardin talk about his experience with the Albany Manual Labor Academy and the Albany Enterprise Academy. Ferguson was a trailblazer, a first in many areas. He used his passion for learning and his influence as a respected educator to break societal barriers by advancing educational opportunities for African Americans. Here, representing Thomas Jefferson Ferguson, is Paul Willis.
Thank you for inviting us, and on behalf of my family, I'd like to thank the Ohio Civil Rights Commission for the honor of the induction of our great-grandfather, Thomas Jefferson Ferguson, to the 2019 Hall of Fame. Thank you. Between Angela and Shannon, I no longer have anything else to say. Thomas Jefferson Ferguson possessed an unyielding commitment and lifelong dedication to creating and advancing educational opportunities for African Americans as a viable pathway from the chattel mentality of slavery to the full and co-equal role of citizenship. His work as an educator, author, orator, civil rights pioneer and activist, political and community leader, lecturer, minister, inspiration and motivational speaker, new thought leader, and principal Masonic leader. We have no excuses, y'all. Helped to advance the growth of civil rights in Ohio for many African American women and women in the second half of the 19th century. Pursuing his own educational goals in Cincinnati in the mid-1840s, Thomas may have begun his pursuit of education through the generosity of benevolent societies and private associations, since public funding for children of color did not become available in Cincinnati until about 1849, when Thomas was about 19. As Shannon mentioned to you, Thomas was able to go to the Albany Manual Labor University to get a higher level of education, but between 1857 and 1859, as a student, Thomas and women were allowed. This was 4 or 5 years before the Civil War, which, as you know, meant that most blacks were in slavery, and most blacks in many places could not be educated, and in some places it was entirely illegal to educate them. And so, Albany Manual Labor University in 1859 decided that blacks and women could no longer attend. This served to, as Shannon said, galvanize Thomas and make him pursue his educational goals within his own control. So in 1859, he had reestablished his residency in Albany, Ohio. And within 4 years, he and others who were evicted from Albany Manual Labor started to make plans and to set the groundwork for Albany Enterprise Academy. As we know, he also helped to start the Ohio Colored Teachers Association in 1861. Other schools such as Otterbein and Wilberforce admitted blacks, but they were controlled by organizations whose policies on African American enrollment could be uncertain. The Albany Enterprise Academy was conceived as an educational institution with the core purpose of maintaining control over the future availability of education as a means of advancing
white administrators and teachers at an all-African-American school. When officials at Lincoln School in Hillsborough violated the Supreme Court's Brown versus the Board of Education decision in 1954, African-American families in that area protested the continuation of segregation. Well, Mary Hackney sprang into action, leading a group of educators to continue teaching the black students when they were denied access to the all-white school. She and her family were threatened, but that did not stop her. She continued her lessons until the district was finally desegregated. Mary Hackney's life was dedicated to ensuring equal education was provided to all, no matter the color of their skin. Representing Mary Hackney is Jim Hackney.
I'm the eldest son of Mary William Hackney, and I'm very glad that the Civil Rights Hall of Fame is bestowing this honor on my mother for her work in education desegregation. I'm glad that Ohio is one of the states that has a Civil Rights Hall of Fame. I'm glad that the New Hope Baptist Church in Hillsborough nominated her for this honor. In the last few years, unfortunately, we have seen an increase in racial tensions, including too many violent acts. Hopefully, by honoring these people who promote civil rights, these acts will decrease. My family is thankful and proud to accept this reward on my mother's behalf. However, Mary would have likely shied away from public acknowledgement. These two Bible verses reflect her beliefs. Micah 6:8, which says, to act justly and walk humbly with your God. And Matthew chapter 6, which states that we should not boast or brag about our good deeds. By doing so, we have already received our reward. By doing so in secret, we will be rewarded by God. Mary was guided by her Quaker faith, which taught that there is that of God in every man. The Quaker founder, George Fox, said that we should be patterns and examples to others. My mother was that example. She would also point out that these three other ladies who taught with her, Louise Griffith, Isabel Rose, Tersina Havens, and her teacher's aide, Rose Kilgore, and the other teacher's aides should be mentioned. And of course, the real heroes of this story are all the great mothers and children who marched in Hillsborough. My mother was one piece of the story that linked the grassroots effort to challenge the status quo and enforce education equality of historic cases such as Brown versus the Board of Education. My mother saw an opportunity to make a positive change in her small community and simply acted by doing what she could, thus demonstrating that one person can be the catalyst for the change that we so wish to see in the world. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little about my mother. Our family humbly accepts this award on her behalf. Thank you. And I'd like to, there's some students here. Could you raise your hands? There they are. Probably made some mistakes on this speech. And I'd like to also thank our county we live in the county of Hillsborough, Highland County, who Shane Wilkerson has a proclamation here given by the House of Representatives, signed by him, and Larry Holswald, holder, the House of Representatives. And is Shane still here? Well, I don't see him. But thank you anyway.
Mr. Hackney, congratulations. Dr. John Hanson started his career working at settlement houses in Cincinnati in the late 50s and early 60s, trying to help people overcome social barriers. As director of Cincinnati's Community Action Commission, he designed programs to combat poverty, including one that became the framework for Head Start. Later in life, Dr. Hansen helped to strengthen the Ohio Civil Rights Commission and its efforts to eradicate racial and religious discrimination. His work did not stop after retirement. His Social Welfare History Project, a website chronicling the history of social reform, has become a popular resource. Representing Dr. John Hansen is Kevin Hansen.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, its commissioners, and its staff, particularly Mary Torsey, for this honor. I'd also like to thank the family of Ohio's 62nd Governor, John Gilligan, especially Governor Gilligan's daughter, the 44th Governor of the state of Kansas, and the 21st U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, for her support. Also, I'd like to thank Pollster Peter Hart and John Umschreider, the Dean of Libraries and University Librarian at Virginia Commonwealth University, and his entire team who picked up the work of my father started years ago with, as she mentioned, the Social Work History Project, the Social Welfare History Project, to record the history and evolution of social work and social welfare. And everyone else who wrote letters of support for my father and encouraged me to nominate my father. I'd also like to recognize and thank my father's good friend and co-worker here in Columbus, Robert Daly, who's back here, who himself was a trailblazer for civil rights and social reform in Ohio. There he is. And of course, I need to recognize my mother, Ethel Hansen. My father's wife of 64 years. She should be up here on the stage with me. She was his partner in all his professional and personal success, and equally deserving of this award. You get to wear it later. Finally, I'd like to thank all my brothers and other members of our family who have joined us here today. I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of my father, John Edward Hansen. He would have loved to have been here today. He enjoyed public speaking, where me, not so much. My father would have taken this opportunity to give you all a lecture on the history of Ohio civil rights laws and its commission. He would have enjoyed the symmetry of this ceremony taking place at the State House, where he worked as both the Director of Public Welfare and as Governor Gilligan's Chief of Staff. We tried to find it, but I believe his office was somewhere down through those doors. It's also fitting that this award is given in the same atrium that we used 17 years ago to memorialize my oldest brother, John, who worked for many years in the state of Ohio. My father came to Ohio in the fall of 1959 to take a job managing a settlement house in Cincinnati. Settlement houses, for those of you too young to know or to remember, were neighborhood centers where new immigrants, the destitute, the elderly went for assistance with the challenges in their lives, including hunger, racial discrimination, unemployment, juvenile delinquency, and substandard housing. The 60s was a very difficult time for Cincinnati, and my father immediately immersed himself into the community and stood out as a community organizer. By 1963, he was serving as the executive director of the Seven Hills Neighborhood Houses, chairman of the Ohio Valley chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, and a member of the Catholic Interracial Council. My father, as a 33-year-old father of four, volunteered to help organize Cincinnati's delegation to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, better known today as Martin Luther King's March on Washington. While preparing for the march and recruiting people who could barely pay their way, my father received a handwritten letter from his father, pleading for him not to go. The letter simply stated, "This is not your fight." My father clearly disagreed. He understood that the fight was his fight, and he had the responsibility to go and stand for the enactment of national civil rights legislation. And despite the real possibility of violence erupting in Washington, D.C., my father left his wife and 4 boys, all between the ages of 7 and 1, and boarded that charter train with 500 others from Cincinnati. After the march, my father eventually made his way to Columbus when his friend John Gilligan became the state's 62nd governor. From that vantage point of the state capitol, where he worked initially as the director of public welfare for the state of Ohio, and then the governor's chief of staff, he continued to fight for civil rights and social reform. He helped the governor increase support for age-dependent children, deinstitutionalize the care of those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, lobbied for funds to repair the decaying Ohio cities at that time, and create the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency to protect Ohio's air and water, and established the Governor's Business and Employment Council to improve the business climate for new and small businesses and encourage opportunities for minority enterprises. After working at the State House, my father returned to his roots of social work, getting involved with national organizations and working on issues impacting the elderly. Toward the end of his career, he realized the power of online access to information and spent significant time coordinating and documenting the experiences and stories of other social reformers so future generations can learn from these pioneers. He compiled this into the Social Welfare History Project, which is available for everyone to pursue through the Virginia Commonwealth University website. Had he been here today, my father would have told us the opposite of what his father told him. The struggle continues today. The fight for civil rights is a fight for all of us that we must embrace. He would have told us that the toxicity of today's political environment is eroding the gains made by the social services pioneers who laid down the foundations of progress towards more just civil rights laws, the reduction of income inequality, and victory in the war of poverty. He would have told us that a new generation of leaders need to step up, and step up quickly to hold the line on the gains made by these pioneers like himself. That we as a country can't go back, as to some, even though some want us to, that we must continue progressing forward toward a time and a place where all people are treated equally, regardless of the color of the skin, how they identify, who they love, and where they come from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and congratulations. Geraldine Mock has a long list of firsts. She was one of the first women enrolled in the aeronautical engineering program at OSU. Step 1, becoming the first woman to fly solo around the world. There are those of us who are old enough, believe it or not, to remember that day in March of 1964 when Jerry Mock took off from Port Columbus, arriving back home 29 days and 23,000 miles later. First woman to fly solo around the world, Jerry Mock paved the way for gender equality and has been an inspiration to generations of female aviators. Representing Geraldine Jerry Mock is Rita Mock Pike.
one of the most amazing people I've ever known. And it's such an honor to be here representing her and receiving this recognition of the many great things that she did in her life. She was a unique woman. She didn't really care what people said she should and should not do. And when she was a very little girl, she was 7, she went up in an airplane for the first time. And she said, I am going to fly around the world. And at school, she was looking at atlases and reading books and saw pictures of camels and elephants. She said, I'm going to ride a camel and I'm going to ride an elephant. And when I was a little girl, she would tell me all of her stories of the flights around the world. And a lot of things you'll read in her book that she wrote, 3A Charlie, or you'll read in newspapers and stuff. She didn't really talk about those. She liked to talk about the king's red pajamas in Casablanca, Morocco. She was staying at a hotel and the pajamas were on the rooftop of the palace next door. She remembered things like that. She remembered meeting unique people as she flew around the world and the various things they talked about, like at the time, just all these different women that also were doing things that other women in the U.S. just weren't doing. And they had struck out on their own to also be like, no, I'm not going to be restricted by what society says I'm allowed to do just because I'm a woman. And when she talked about those 3 dreams she had, the camel, the elephant, and the flying around the world, she always said, I think I did pretty good with meeting 2 of those. I mean, for being just a woman. And after her flight around the world in 1964, she actually took several other world records. She had an airplane that she wound up flying to Papua New Guinea in 1969 in October, and it was being donated to missionaries who worked with tribes, distant tribes in Papua New Guinea where they couldn't get medical attention, and the plane was donated to the Flying Padres. And she took several world records doing that. Most of those are gone now because they were speed records. That was a while ago. But my grandma was a very humble woman. She didn't like the spotlight, which is a lot of why people don't know who she is. As a child, I would go to school and the teachers would say, Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly around the world. And I'd say, no, she wasn't. And one time I actually brought my grandma in for show and tell. So she was a very just wonderful woman who her heart was to inspire and encourage other people to pursue their own dreams. She would always ask me, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? She didn't try to put on me her dreams or other people. She said, you and everyone else should be and do what you want, no matter what that is. And she was such an inspiration to me, and I know to my Aunt Susan and to other family and friends. And I've met pilots all over the world that are like, you're Terry's granddaughter. And just hearing the impact that her flight, because she wanted to fly, not because she wanted to take a record, that was her husband's idea. But she just wanted to see the world, and she wanted to encourage other people. And I'm so honored that you are recognizing that, and that she has inspired, I know, some of you here as well. Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you so much, Rita. And I was watching TV that day as a little girl, and I remember thinking, wow, that is the coolest thing. And my grandmother said, why in the world? You can just get on Pan Am and go wherever you want. Why in the world? But thank you so much for being here. Your grandmother was an inspiration. He was heralded as being Toledo's ambassador to just about every racial, ethnic, and religious group in the area. Bert Silverman spent years fighting against discrimination in Toledo and mentoring those individuals who wanted to learn how they themselves could make a difference. Silverman was chairman of the Toledo Board of Community Relations during the racially divided times of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. and then later, as a member of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, he continued his fight against injustice and discrimination. Representing Bert Silverman is Judd Silverman.
Thank you, Angela, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our family, I want to thank the commissioners for inducting my father into the Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame. We are grateful to you for recognizing his lifelong dedication to fighting discrimination in Toledo and throughout the state of Ohio. This wonderful honor would have meant the world to him. Unfortunately, my father passed away at the young age of 59 back in 1978, but thankfully he was able to serve as a commissioner and then chairman of the Ohio Civil Rights Commission from 1972 to 1977. He was extremely honored when Governor John Gilligan appointed him to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. I'd like you to get to know my dad a little bit with some of my memories about him. My dad had an uncompromising dedication to three things. Number one, his family. There was nothing more important to him than his wife, Mary Jo, my sister and me, and his granddaughter. He was a great husband, father, and grandfather. I was a senior in college when my dad passed away, so regretfully, he never got to meet my wonderful wife, Lisa, and our two boys, Reed and Ben. Number two, the city of Toledo. Through his work as executive director of Downtown Toledo Associates, he was known as Mr. Downtown Toledo for his never-ending efforts to revitalize the city he loved. Number three, civil rights. Dad's passion to fight discrimination of any kind was unconditional. He faithfully served as the chairman of the Board of Community Relations in Toledo for 26 years, a position he volunteered for. Dad was a strong believer in volunteerism. He used to say to me, there's no better way to give back to your community than by donating your time and energy to a cause that helps others. The Board of Community Relations was formed to promote, empower, and support citizens and neighborhoods to help create justice, equal opportunity, and a harmonious environment. There was no one better at being able to bring leaders of both the white and black communities together to confront race-relation issues than my dad. He was definitely a trusted leader throughout the community. He earned that trust through the years by beating the drum of fairness, equality, and civility one day at a time. My dad was a man of great character, integrity, compassion, charm. He had a wonderful sense of humor that I think he developed while attending the Ohio State University, and an ability to make friends with everyone he came into contact with. I remember him telling me at a young age to never judge someone based on the color of their skin, their religion, or gender. And it didn't take me long to figure out that my dad lived his life without bias. I couldn't have asked for a better role model and father. I'd like to close my remarks by reading a letter that was included in Dad's nomination packet from Bishop Robert Culp of Toledo. My dad would have been 100 years old this year, so as you can imagine, it was a challenge for me to find people that actually worked with him back in the 60s and 70s to write a letter of support. But thankfully, Bishop Culp is still going strong at age 93 and was happy to write the following letter on my dad's behalf. To the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, I'm an African-American male who came to Toledo, Ohio in May of 1961. My reason for being here was to become the senior pastor of the First Church of God. We're where he still is today. So now he's a bishop. I immediately became involved in civic matters, but especially in race relations. It was a period when black and white leaders had to deal with issues and matters of great importance to the peace of a community. A significant player in the events of that day was a gentleman named Bert Silverman. Formed during this period of time was a vital organization for the well-being of all of us called the Board of Community Relations. Although Mr. Silverman was involved in other community projects that benefited us all greatly, in my view, his most significant and rewarding endeavors revolved around his role in community relations. Sometimes out front, but often behind the scenes, his role and reputation enabled this city to navigate through troubled waters. I will always be grateful for his presence, influence, and positive actions that made this city a better place. His name is remembered with fondness, and his life story ought to be included in our historical records. And thanks to you today, his name will be remembered in this wonderful Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame. And on behalf of our family, I want to thank the commissioners for honoring Bert Silverman with this wonderful recognition and honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gunnar. Congratulations. Stanley Eugene Tolliver Sr. spent his long career advocating the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tolliver took on controversial cases of police brutality and racially charged situations like the riots in Glenville in 1962. And he served as legal counsel for just about every civil rights organization in Cleveland. Tolliver later served on the Cleveland Board of Education for 12 years, pushing for more parent involvement in the lives of the children of the Cleveland school system. Stanley Tolliver Sr., an award-winning civil rights advocate. And representing Stanley Tolliver is Sherry Tolliver.
I'd like to thank the commission for deciding to honor not just my father, but all the honorees today. Sitting here listening to these stories and knowing, as you said, in the Jewish tradition, it's not history, it's stories and memory that we stand on and that we build on. And I think back to the first 2 jobs I ever had were working in my father's office and working in my mother's bookstore. She had a black, well at that time it was a Negro history bookstore in the 1960s. And my job for my father was to cut out the articles from the newspaper that had anything to do with civil rights or discrimination. And so I became a family historian in a way. And I didn't know I was living through history. It was just what was happening around me. And now that I look back and I think about him going to Jackson, Mississippi, and helping to enroll people to vote. And the reason he did that was because his father was from Mississippi and had moved to Cleveland in 1919 because he was not able to vote. And how that story was passed down to us about why it was important to have civic engagement and social justice was something that was everyone's responsibility. I didn't know I was living through history. I thought the civil rights movement was in the South because we lived in Cleveland and it was the North. Now I look back through all those articles I cut out and I think about what we went through and the harassment and the difficulties and the challenges and how courageous not just my father was, but my mother standing beside him and behind him and doing her own work as an advocate for justice and civil rights, but she never saw the limelight, so you didn't hear her name. But she was equally involved in passing that mantle on to my late sister, who was an advocate and a social justice worker who represented the United States at the UN Conference on Racism in South Africa before she passed after losing her battle to breast cancer. So I say all that to say that I was the one that nominated my father, and I felt awkward doing it because it seemed like that was an arrogant thing to do. But when I thought back of all the history that I had collected and organized and put together and all the stories that I had learned, it seemed just and fitting that I would submit his name. And I'm so honored that you thought the same and that you've given him this honor. And it is a privilege to stand on the stage with the rest of the honorees. And I would say to you what he would say to me, the struggle continues. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2019 class of the Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame. Thank you so much. Now, those stories don't make you want to get off your behind and go do something meaningful. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. You know, many of our Hall of Fame inductees from years past come back to visit with us at these events. If there are any of our past Hall of Fame honorees, would you please stand and be recognized at this time? Thank you all so much for being with us today. And unfortunately, there are those Hall of Fame honorees who are no longer with us, so please, to honor them, could we just have a brief moment of silence while we think about those honorees who passed on? All right, thank you very much. Before I go on, I have got to say thank you and kudos to the two ladies who've been signing. I do not know your names, and I am so sorry. But, okay, stop for 1 second. You're making me tired. Stop. What is your name?
My name is Christy.
Christy and Jamaica? Christy and Jamaica, can we give it up for them? And I apologize to everyone who's been up here speaking. Sometimes I didn't hear y'all because I was watching them. So thank you so much, ladies, for being here and for helping us to tell the stories that we've heard here today. And I hope that, you okay? I didn't mean to, like, slow your roll or stop your roll. Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we could not do this without our sponsors. We just couldn't. So here, representing one of our sponsors from Wright State University, is the university's interim chief diversity officer, Lindsay Miller. Lindsay?
Wright State University, along with our co-sponsors, would like to again acknowledge all of our 2019 Ohio Civil Rights Hall of Fame inductees and commend them for their tireless advocacy and perseverance for social change. Wright State has been a proud supporter of this event, and we look forward to many more years. Causes like these are important to our campus because it ties into the natural fabric of what we do at Wright State. For those of you who don't know, the list is long, but I will only mention a few. Wright State is ranked nationally, #3 to be exact, in serving students with disabilities. Our University of College of Engineering and Computer Science has recently been named among the nation's academic leaders in inclusive excellence by the American Society for Engineering Education, and our Management Information Systems program is ranked #1 in the nation for serving military vets. And a fun fact about Wright State, for those of you who don't know, both our president and our provost both identify as female, which is incredibly rare in higher ed. Currently, at Wright State, we are embarking on a journey to implement inclusive excellence on our campus. For those of you who don't know what that is or have never heard that term, it's essentially this concept that looks at systems and structures and the way that we build an environment conducive for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really this idea that those concepts are everybody's job. It's not just hiring one person to do the work. It's calling everybody in to do the work and to make it their job. It's asking everybody and challenging everybody to embed diversity and inclusion in everything that they do. And I mentioned that not only to highlight some of the great work we're doing at Wright State right now and to give us a shameless plug. I think it's extremely important when we talk about this work that we recognize, appreciate, and encourage the people that are embedding those concepts into their daily lives and furthering this work in areas that aren't necessarily recognized for diversity. Because that's how true change starts to happen, when other people outside the normal channels, outside the normal diversity officers and offices, start thinking about it and embedding it into their work. That's why I'm so happy and pleased to introduce our next film and speaker. The following film and speaker give insight into how one individual, Billy Joe White, has decided to continue to think about it and to do that work of overcoming hate in his own way. Billy White is a tattoo artist from Zanesville, Ohio, who decided that something had to be done to change the hate and racism in his community. White started covering up tattoos of hate speech and bigotry for free in his studio, Red Rose Tattoo. He takes a permanent mark of prejudice and turns it into an opportunity for redemption and community healing. He calls on others to, quote, erase the hate and move forward toward a more loving, inclusive tomorrow. Please enjoy the following film, Beneath the Ink.
The area here in southeast Ohio is what you want to call like Appalachia. If you're not familiar with the Appalachia region, you can pretty much sum it up by saying, poor, uneducated people. Yeah, they're tearing down factories, they're tearing down houses. People are legit struggling. You see it every day. And socially speaking, when you're not helping society move forward, you're bound and determined to see it crumble in front of you. My name's Billy White. I'm a tattoo artist in Zanesville, Ohio. It's simple. I tell people all the time that I really feel like my community is 30 years behind.
What about the Confederate butterfly tattoo? Do you want me to get that?
I don't even know if I know what that is personally. Just
I think she called it. I think it was a Facebook message.
it's been overwhelming. I guess it's been eye-opening to find out, that a lot of this stuff does exist and that it is, I've even tattooed some of these guys that didn't know they had this kind of stuff on them. And then boom, here we are, we're covering it up. As long as I can remember, we're living in the most toxic time I've ever lived in. Society's belief systems are seemingly changing or reverting back into a time that I thought we had moved past. So I'm seeing this and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this person died. There's people out there that are willing to kill for their hate. I couldn't stand back anymore and think as I often do, what can I do?
We're trying to cover it together. Making the design a little bit busy so we can hide the image in it.
Was it done at a shop or?
Yeah, but not by somebody that was licensed to shoot tattoos.
Right.
So I came in to get a swastika tattoo covered up on my foot. Yep. I was in a bad relationship and the guy was a white supremacist. So he inspired it and I got drunk enough on wild turkey that I decided to do it. He was abusive. It was definitely a mental thing as well. So I just took on his abuse, you know. And I mean, I really did feel that way at some point in time, but I mean, I don't now. I do interim daycare, and most of the kids that I watch are biracial, so you know.
Come on back, man. Because of my social media outreach, you know, a lot of people, once I say share, it spreads like wildfire. Have you come around here for me on this side of the table? We'll get the stencil on you, my man, and we'll go from there. And it happens. You see it both sides. You see people that are super stoked for the person, and that are really happy that the person is moving on. And then you have the people that are like, well, would they have done it if it wasn't for free, kind of thing. I don't care that it's for free, or I don't care why they got it. I just feel like I have to do something.
Right now I live in Thornville, Ohio, originally from North Ohio. Spent 15 years down in Malta, Ohio. I was born and raised here in Circleville, Ohio. My dad was alcoholic. My mom was an alcoholic. Growing up, that's all mom and dad did was drink. Dad was very racist. The rest of my family, my uncles and stuff, was very racist and negative toward everybody. And then when I was 16 years old, Dad went over the edge to commit suicide. At that point in time, my life, I absolutely hated everyone. I didn't care who it was, white, black, I hated everybody. I ended up going down a path that most people never go down. And it really took a big change to pull me out of that.
Let me see your back. I want to get a tracing of it real quick. See what we're working with.
You know, still to this day, I'll sit back and think, what the hell was I thinking? It was like that all the way until I was about 27 years old. A couple years later, me and the ex-wife was talking about adopting a little boy out of Florida. Because that's my son. I don't want my son to know that his dad participated in that. My son now is 12 years old. One of the greatest kids you ever meet. He's loving. The boy loves me to death, loves me to death. Life of hate is just not what you want. You just don't want to live life like that.
Maybe some projects on that.
Just a minute, I'll do it. that because they don't understand or want to understand, or they're afraid to try to understand. And I think I found myself now, and I'm happy with who I am and the way my life and the path of my life is taking.
All right, man. We'll start mixing up some colors that can so very quick. That's how I know tattoos are so powerful. Because, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm getting all these tattoos lasered off my face. You know, I'm taking them off my face because I don't like the way it makes people perceive me. It's not because they don't mean anything to me. They actually mean more to me. They mean a lot to me. Because I got them all for like my parents when they passed away. And I'm on the cusp of my mom's birthday. Makes me all emotional and shit. So I lost my parents 49 hours apart 7 years ago in April. You know, they're not here, but that doesn't mean we can't make them proud. I want to make them proud. I want to make my kids proud. So that when I'm gone, they're not like, yeah, my dad was just a guy. He just did tattoos, you know? Maybe he did something. Couple on that for you, John. Take a look at this thing, man.
Definitely gives a new start to things, man.
I'm gonna keep doing these things. I'm gonna keep covering up this stuff forever, as far as I'm concerned. But I can do it for you.
Definitely makes me feel better. It's definitely a better thing. Right.
So, I think that's what we plan on doing.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, man. You're awesome. Welcome. I really appreciate that.
I'm just gonna keep trying to, you know, day by day, make the world just maybe a little bit better of a place. If it's possible.
Good morning, Black Moms. We still beat noon, so that's where it's good. I have no words for, I did so good. Anybody who's seen this film, and I know several of you have, know that it always chokes me up, and it always, touches me in different ways every time, depending on who's seen them. So when this is played in a room full of so many people that I admire and respect, and I'm so humbled to be here. I just want to thank you. I want to thank the Ohio Civil Rights Commission for having me. I want to thank a guy whose name hasn't been said today. That's Stephen Tapatowski, who's actually from my town, who I believe without him, I wouldn't be here today. And I think that I thank him for putting me in connection with such wonderful people and allowing me to tell my story because he found value in it as well. I want to thank Michael Payton because
he's also from where I'm from, and he knows firsthand about that demographic and about the struggles that we face each day. So thank you for letting me tell my story. Man, someone said earlier that the struggle continues, and it does. And there's a part in that film where I show just how naive I really am. I show my naivety by saying that I thought that we had moved past this, that we had moved forward, but in reality, that was my white privilege getting in my way of seeing that the struggles never ended and that they continue today. I'm not an educated man. I have no formal education. I'm very similar to my mother and father, who were born in the 30s and raised through the 50s and 60s and saw things that were atrocious as Americans. My mom was raised in a Catholic orphanage and got out and really did everything that she could for a woman that had no education. My father was a coal miner who worked very hard, and they both, we didn't have a lot, but they both instilled me in things that meant more than money. They taught me that you had to care and that you didn't have to have a big fancy education to do something. So that's kind of what I've done. I've been very happy with the attention that this film has got and that the shop has got. And we're going to continue to keep pushing forward and just do more things when it comes to civil rights and when it comes to just marginalized groups in general. There's so much work to be done, and we have just endless amounts of opportunities to make strides in those fields. So I would encourage you guys, just like I encourage my 3 children, is do something. Whatever it is, do something. We have to be better as Americans and as humans, because the human race is truly the only race that matters. We have to move forward, and I believe that examples of the great people that were inducted here today are just encouragement for us all to do more. Like everyone said here, I don't feel like I deserve to be here. I don't feel like I've done enough. So I'm going to continue, and hopefully we can work together and we can make the strides that need to be made. So thank you guys again so much.
I've had a crush on him. It's okay, his wife knows about it, his daughters know about it. That's the department over there. But thank you to everybody, to the commission, and to everybody who does whatever it is that they can do, whatever you can do to help to advance the cause of civil rights. Because if we don't do it, who will? Thanks again for having me here. I look forward to this every single year. Thanks for indulging me. Thanks for tolerating me. I hope I didn't offend too many people. If I did, just come back next year and I'll apologize to you. But thank you so much for all the work that you do. And to our honorees up here, I just don't have words. I know that you were representing family members, but the fact that you were there, you were all there when they were doing the wonderful things that they were doing to make our state a great state, then you got a piece of that too. You got a piece of it too. So thanks for sharing your parents and grandparents with us. And now, Chair Barreras.
Fifth time emceeing our Civil Rights Hall of Fame, so I have a small founding sponsors, Wright State University, PNC, and Honda. Again, every year you support us and you come here, and even Wright State, they host us at an annual commission meeting, so we wouldn't be here without you. Thank you. I want to thank a lot of distinguished guests, a lot of elected officials. I think our agency leaders are here, representatives from Senator Portman's office, Senator Brown's office, and many, many state officials. Thank you. I know you're busy and you've taken the time to be here. Thank you. We have many people who travel from around the corners of the state of Ohio, but we also have our friends and partners in West Virginia. The West Virginia Human Rights Commission is here. Can you stand and be acknowledged? Our work wouldn't be possible without our federal partners, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Would you please stand if you're still here? Finally, I have the most bittersweet honor of inviting a special guest. As many of you know, Executive Director Michael Payton has announced that he will retire at the end of the year. Michael has served the state more than 35 years. 26 of those with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, 18 as Executive Director. So all of our time, on behalf of the commissioners, we want to thank him, honor him, and please ask him to say some departing remarks.
It's my brother, because first, today, I didn't come to talk about myself, and I didn't know that our distinguished chair would share with you my imminent departure. So I'll keep a tradition to talk about the people on the stage today, rather than myself. Today, we celebrated some great patriots. It just seems to me that the only thing that we're going to do once we leave here today is to foul away those programs and do nothing from there. We would squander a great opportunity. We'd also trivialize great accomplishments of all these people. Because you see, no matter where you sit, and no matter what your vantage point,
Dr. King's dream has been deferred. That dream has not been realized. So I think it's all incumbent upon us to reach deep within ourselves, to figure out what it is that each and every one of us can do. In the spirit of tradition started by folks like this, to make America live up to its true promise. You know, it saddens us at the Civil Rights Commission to tell you, for example, that in America, hate crimes were on the rise against all protected groups, religious groups, gay people, black people, Hispanics, Latinos. This is the year of 2019, not 1950. The work is undone. We have much to do. It saddens me, for example, that as Billy, as the video points out, you get hate groups marching. We will not be replaced by Jews, really? With the outright. You can lock it into synagogues, churches, and mosques, killing people just because of their religious beliefs. And certainly, you know, last but not least, the cases that we see here at the Civil Rights Commission will leave you a veiled yard. So once again, I have to say that let's just get our second wind and figure out what it is that we can do for our community. Because you see, I remind you that it was Dr. King that said that we all can be drum majors for justice. He wasn't talking about my beloved Buckeyes dotting the I gathered on Ohio Stadium. He was talking about dotting the I's of what hopes and dreams of people, their heads and their hearts. He also said that you don't have to be somebody like Michael Payton or Lori Morales or Commissioner of the Civil Rights Commission to do something about bigotry and hatred. He said that your subject and verb does not have to match. Everybody can probably do something no matter who it is that you are. I say to you that you don't have to be Billy with an ink gun in your hand, seeking to help people that want to redeem themselves from bigotry and hatred to make a difference in the community. I also say to you that you don't have to have the aplomb and the grace of Angela Mason to pick up a microphone and inspire somebody. You certainly don't need a high-level position like Shannon Arden to do something in your community. You see, we're ever going to change America. We're going to change it person by person, house by house, block by block, and city by city. We all have some high obligation to carry forth the keys that have been left with us to drive this car down the road of freedom. Hopefully we'll get to that destiny one day, but not today. Also, in closing, try to keep this sharp because you see I have just a little bit of passion. It's not working. Just a little bit. Dr. King also, one of my favorite things that Dr. King once said was that life's most persistent and urgent question is, quote, what are you doing for others? Think of that for a moment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Now, as we leave here today, I will remind you that you want to pursue this and help out what we're talking about here today. You're going to run into this next. You've been there before. Those are the people that their cups are always half empty or they half full. Some of them will tell you, well, wait a minute, Michael, why should I care about justice? There's no justice in America. Why should I care? I say you go to tell them that, well, first of all, they need to be just themselves. But you also remind them it was Dr. King that said that our lives begin to end the moment that we become silent about things that matter. Our lives begin to end the moment that we become silent about things that matter. That's a pretty powerful statement. I say to you that it matters that women are paid the same thing as men for the same work. I say to you that it matters that black people and different ethnic groups are free of bigotry and hatred in places of public accommodation, religious places, and housing, so that they can enjoy life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, so that we can make this dream reality. I say that it matters that disabled accommodations so they can also have equal access to the hopes and dreams of the American dream. So in closing then, I want to also remind you some wise words of Maya Angelou, poet Maya Angelou. She once said that if you don't like something, change it. But if you can't change it, change your attitude. With that said, we wish you the best in all that your endeavors. It's been a privilege and honor for me to lead my organization. My work is not done either. I'm just going to keep my second wind and figure out what, if anything, that I can do. But I've been, it's proud for me to be associated with Chair Barraras, all of our distinguished commissioners, all of our staff. Thank you very, very much on behalf of my family.
Thank you. That concludes our program. For those of you joining us for lunch, please head over to the rotunda. Thank you.